And welcome to the episode of DIOTALK. I'm Dio. Let's talk. My guest of the evening, he's in the Navy. He's an author. He's an all-around badass. Ladies and gentlemen, give a warm welcome to Commander Spears. Welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Hey Dio, thanks. I don't know if I've heard that one lately, but I'll take it. I'll be a badass. Hey, just I got to get this out before we get down track here. I'm just here as William Spears, even though I am actively in the Navy. Everything I say here is my personal opinion and doesn't reflect any kind of official position or endorsement by the Department of Defense or any government organization. Similarly, if I mention a product or hyperlink to something like that, that doesn't constitute any kind of government endorsement of that thing. That's one of those things I have to say, like right off the bat, because inevitably I will say some dumb thing, and someone somewhere will say like, "Oh, the Navy doesn't like this product or is of this opinion," and like, no, that's just my dumb ass, So,
Hey, well, thank you. We appreciate it. So we'll keep it when it comes to the Navy. We'll keep it nice and over the top. We don't want to
yeah,
get you in trouble. What we do here is we want to hear your story. What inspired you to do what you do?
sure.
I want to talk about how did you get in? What inspired you to get in the Navy? And
Mhm.
then let's talk about your book, which is awesome. I don't want to botch the name, but when time comes, I would like you to present it to everyone because it's a dope name.
Yeah, you got it, man. All right. So I guess you asked like, what's my story to start with? So I just
Yeah,
joined the Navy out of high school. So
nice.
I'm from a small town in Louisiana. You'll hear my southern accent will come out at times, especially if I have a beer or something like that. It'll really come out, or if I'm talking to my parents on the phone. But yeah, small town in Louisiana. And whenever I graduated high school, I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. And so, my dad basically advised me like, hey, if you can put up with the military, it can really put you ahead in life in various ways when it comes to training and education and stuff like that. And so I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so I joined the Navy and basically went in with the rule of let me do whatever's the hardest thing that I can do from a mental standpoint. And so I ended up into the nuclear power program. That's what they offered me. That was kind of like the highest, most technical thing that you could do is nuclear propulsion, to work in the engine rooms of submarines and aircraft carriers. And in the training for that, and that's like 2 years of training before you ever make it to a ship. And so, in the process of training for that, as soon as I got there, I basically went into it with the attitude that, and I was told before I went in, like, hey, when you're in the military, if they offer you school, take it. If they're going to give you training or they're going to give you school, you go, you sign up for it and you go. And so, I just started applying for every special program, every officer program, and everything that I could as soon as I got there. And so my grades were good enough. They weren't amazing, but they were good enough that I was able to go to the Naval Academy. Before I ever went to a ship, they said, okay, we'll take you off of this, go be an enlisted guy path. And, that was on the path to go be a technician in nuclear power. And instead send you to college. And so that was at the Naval Academy in Annapolis. And so that was a long detour, that required a lot more time but it was totally worth it because I came out on the other side with an engineering degree. And I really had kind of fell in love with the nuclear power community whenever I was in it as an enlisted guy. So I went back into it to go into submarines as an officer. And so 8 years later, after high school, I'm finally, on my path to finally go to sea. And, my friends from high school still make fun of me because I've gone to school so many times after that, because I've continued down with that just rule of if they offer you school, you go. I'm like, okay, and so I've now, every time they're like, hey, we need someone to go to this war college. I'm like, sign me up, let's go. I'll go read books, sure. And so I've had just wonderful opportunities there. But it's basically been 20 yees in the Navy now. So I've got
Wow.
three years as an enlisted guy, and the rest of it is as an officer. And multiple degrees down my belt, although I've I've never been to I joke that I've never been to a real college. All of the schools that I've been to have been some form of military institution. But that's fine with me. I mean, it's just been an excellent educational opportunity, and I've had so many opportunities, been so many places that are just amazing. But now I'm a commander in the Navy. I'm in between tours. My last time on a submarine was as the second in command of the submarine. So, wow. Denzel Washington from Crimson Tide, like that position. And then, if I go back to sea, it'll be as a captain, and that's what I hope for. Fingers crossed on that someday. But in between, right now I'm at the Pentagon, looking at spreadsheets and how much things cost.
Calculating.
Yeah.
How was that like? How were you able to divide your time between education and essentially working in the Navy or in the military? Like, was it difficult for you? Was it challenging? Was it easy?
Well, I took advantage of the opportunities whenever the Navy said, "Hey, we want to send someone to a school." I said, "Please sign me up. I want to go." And you will find that not everyone wants to do that. And so as a result, I basically got to do all of the school that I've done in residence, where that was my only job, which is not the case for everybody. I would say most people I know, most of my friends have done night school at some point, where it's like you're doing this job in an office somewhere in between ships, and you're kind of expected to get a master's degree while you're doing that. And people are doing that on their own time. I've never had that experience, because I've always said, "Hey, send me to the Naval Postgraduate School, or send me to the War College." And they're like, "Okay, well, we need to send 3 people there." And generally the reason people don't do that, not everyone signs up for that, is because you have to move your family a lot to do that. You end up having to move more than you would otherwise, because you're only in that place for a year. And so having to uproot your family, and a lot of people just don't want to do that. But I was, my family's all on board. They're like, "Yeah, let's go. We tend to see you more when you're at school, so let's go to school." So that's worked out really well for me.
That's awesome. I'm happy you did that. How long does it take, like in your experience, talking to your peers and your superiors? Like, generally speaking, how long does it take someone to become a captain and be able to be a commander of his own ship?
It's roughly a 20-year career. So
wow.
the way it works is that, and it's not quite the same path for enlisted guys, but for officers, it's a lot more rigid, where you'll do roughly 3 years as a junior officer, or what we call a division officer. And that 3 years is mostly spent trying to figure out which end of the boat is forward, and you're just learning. You're head in the books, and you're just memorizing schematics and memorizing procedures, and you're just constantly learning. And then you go and you spend a couple of years on shore duty somewhere, basically just kind of recharging your batteries and learning how to be a human again after being on a submarine for so long. Yeah. And then you go back to a submarine for another roughly 3-year tour as a department head. And that's going to be either as the engineer or the navigator or the weapons officer. I was the weapons officer of an attack submarine for my department head tour. And then you go back to, shore duty somewhere, do some job somewhere for a couple of years. And then you come back as what we call the XO, or the executive officer, which is the second in command of a submarine. And for me, that was on a ballistic missile submarine. And that was out of Washington State then. And so that's about a 2-year tour. Yeah. And then after that, you go and you do a couple of years ashore. And, if you're picked for it, you go be a captain. So they find you go through like a year of school, just a bunch of different schools before you go and do that.
Wow. So it's like you're constantly in training preparation, whether you're in sea or at land, it's constantly preparation nonstop. Which can be annoying sometimes.
Well, our joke about it is that, particularly as an officer, is as soon as you know what you're doing, you've been there too long, and it's time to move you on. Because you're always learning something, and you're as soon as you get comfortable and you've got enough of it, then that's time that we can get someone else in that job and they can start learning. And so, it's not exactly by design. You spend usually your first year in a job figuring it out, and then after that you've kind of got it and can manage the job for a while.
Oh. What was it like when the first time you had to study for you? Were you nervous? Did you have anxiety? Was it like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this?
It was so you're basically talking about as a junior officer. That was a like I said, it was the time where you're just constantly swamped in the books and just trying to learn everything that you can learn. And I'm not a super I don't have the technical talent that a lot of the guys that I work with do. I'm a lot more of a literary guy, and so if one guy studies it for 30 minutes and he's got this diagram memorized, I'm going to have to study for an hour, and I'll do that, but basically busting my butt for all that time to get through all the qualifications and learn the job. So the first like year, whenever you were a junior officer, the first thing you learn, the job that you learn how to do, is to run the reactor plant, or basically to supervise it. So think, Star Trek, Geordi,
Yeah.
back in the engine room. That's basically the equivalent of that. You're back there. It's not nearly as cool as the Enterprise. It's a lot more gauges and switches and buttons and stuff. And you've got your panel operators in front of you, a reactor operator, an electric plant operator, and a steam plant control panel guy. And they've got all their valves and switches and stuff. And so you're the officer behind them supervising that. That's the first thing that you really, where you start adding value, is whenever you become proficient enough to do that job well. And then you eventually move up forward and learn how to give the orders that we call it driving the boat, where you give the order that drives the boat in one direction or another, left full rudder, steady course 125, dive, you make your depth X.
Yeah.
So, and then you go around and do submarine stuff, and that's when it gets really fun.
Well, so you're in the summer for a long period of time. So like in there, do you get days off? Do you get free time? Do you get sometimes to decompress, or it's always, go. Preparation is everything.
You are always on. It's almost like a time warp. Because you go in and you're working so much, and just the level of dynamics and pressure and everything, and kind of what you're always thinking about the next plan, the next evolution that you're training for, or the next drill you've got to run, or all this equipment you've got to fix, whatever you're trying to manage. You're busy. You're very busy, and it's almost like whenever you don't remember a dream anymore. After you wake up and you have it for a little while, but then it becomes foggy very fast, and you very quickly forget it, even if you try not to. I find that whenever I come home from being underway, it all just is very quickly a blur, and I don't remember what happened when, and it can be a couple of weeks ago and it'll feel like it was 3 years ago or something. And what boat did that happen on? It's just kind of like this weird phenomenon. I think it's a function of just being busy,
Wow. That's incredible. So when you come out of there, it's like, do you feel often like it's a different world, pop culture is going on, like just trying to connect back to reality?
Dio, that's like one of the blessings. And it's kind of it doesn't feel like a blessing, because it feels like you lose contact with social media, and you lose contact with the news and everything, and you think like, oh man, I'm out of it, but you forget about it. You don't miss it, because you very quickly just get used to other things, and then human beings just have to interact like they used to. And instead of having my face in my phone, I might have to go play cards with another person at a table, somewhere, And so like not being connected to the news, and mostly not getting blasted with advertising all the time. I found that after being on a submarine, I'm just allergic to advertising. I can't watch TV. Immediately they're blaring a commercial at you. I'm like, turn off. No, I can't, or I can't listen to the radio. And it's just because I get used to not hearing it.
Yeah, I got it. So, like in this period of time, what inspired you to write your book?
So I've always been into philosophy. And even when I was in high school, I was always thinking about what's right and wrong, and why do we think that is right and wrong? Why do we think what we think? And that's what philosophy is it's thinking about thinking, and what do you believe? Are you sure? and why, and I've always been into that, but no one was ever going to pay me to go to school for it. And so, but it's always something I enjoyed reading and studying in my spare time. While I was at the Naval Academy, as a student there, I discovered Stoicism through a famous admiral who was really into the Stoics, and found that it was very helpful through his experience as a prisoner of war. And reading his writings kind of introduced me to the Stoic philosophy. And when I came across that, I'm like, oh, this is how I've always thought anyway. It very much resonated with kind of how I thought. So I got to where I really enjoyed that, and just read everything I possibly could about it. And it dawned on me that this particular philosophy is very resonant, has very many parallels with military culture and just how the military thinks about things and does things. And a lot of people know that. It's just kind of a given that this is a very military style philosophy, duty and honor, and, worrying about what you can control, focusing on what's important, tuning out all the rest. Those kinds of things are ideas that are reinforced in Stoicism very deeply. And so it's just kind of known as a military philosophy. Well, I wanted to prove that. And at some point, kind of later on, as after I'd been in the Navy for a few years as an officer, I'm just studying, and I'm like, man, someone needs to write a book on this. And it seems like no one's doing it. So I'm just going to get started and see how long it takes. And so I just got started. And, I've always been a writer. I've always enjoyed writing like essays or magazine articles and stuff like that as a professional, usually having something to do with the Navy, of like, hey, I think we should build nuclear powered surface ships or something like that, just articles, professional articles. And eventually I'm like, you know what, I bet I could write a book on this. It just might take a long time. And it did. It took forever. It took almost 10 years,
Wow.
And so we're finally wrapping that up.
So have you officially released it, or it's still in the works to be released?
It releases in November. We're finalizing like the cover and those it's all the little tweaks with the publisher, and, getting people to endorse it on the back and all those little things. Like it's all like publisher gobbledygook. Like, the book's written, I'm done with it. I'm basically done. I'm just kind of,
the most important part is done. It's now them who has to put it together and put it out.
Yeah. And when they want something from me, they'll ask me, and I'll usually turn it around pretty fast. They'll like, hey, we want to change this word to this, and I'll look at it and say, yeah, okay, that's fine, Or they sent me, they have a graphic designer that designed the cover, and it looks
super cool.
Yeah, I like the design of it right now. And so the knife is a metaphor for something in it, by the way, that's in the book. But he said it the other day, they're like, hey, marketing really thinks that we need to change it. And he sent like, what do you think about these alternatives? And like one of them, it had like yellow clouds all over it. Another one was like purple smoke. It looked like I Dream of Jeannie or something. Like, I'm like, no, please don't change the cover. It's great. Yeah. And so I haven't heard back from it. So they have like the power. They can do that if they want. If they want to change it to anything that they want, I really can't tell them no. So I hope that they listen to me.
I think with the knife, because it goes hand in hand with the name, it has a very unique name. It's very impactful, I will say. Can you give us the name, please?
The name of the book is Stoicism as a Warrior Philosophy. And so what I'm saying is, within that title are a couple of claims. One of them is that there is such a thing as a warrior philosophy, which I'm saying that, this is a philosophy, as a discrete way of thinking about things that, and I'm saying that there can be one that is good for, particularly conducive to the military profession. And I'm saying Stoicism is it. But that is definitely not to say that Stoicism is only good for the military. It's just particularly useful for the military. If it's kind of blowing up right now in popular culture. Marcus Aurelius, is probably the most famous of the Stoic philosophers, but there's several others And people, if you just Google it, you'll get bombarded with, there's just a gajillion Stoicism books out there, and there's just blogs, and you don't need to buy anything because there's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
infinity of this stuff on the internet where people are finding that it helps them maintain mental stability. And there's very good reasons for that I can go into, but people find that it helps keep them sane and kind of sort their thoughts in a constructive way. By me saying Stoicism is a warrior philosophy, I'm basically saying, hey, if there was a such thing as like the Jedi religion, or the Knights
Yeah.
Templar today, or something like this would be their thing. This would be their way of thinking. And the book is really written for the military. It's kind of meant for me I'm kind of presenting it to military leadership and saying like, hey, this is useful. And if you wanted to know where this philosophy parallels with and what it has to say about military issues and military lifestyle, from beginning to end, here is what the ancient Stoics actually said. So I researched it very deeply. It's not an easy book. It's not kind of my first Stoicism book at all. It's more of a, hey, I've been into this for a while and I want to know more deeply what the ancient Stoics actually said about this and that. And I've got over like 500 citations in it, so it's very kind of academically researched.
Right. So it's more like it has to do a lot with your experience being in the military field, but also learning as you've gone throughout these years and put it in a place and we're like, hey, use this. This can help you.
So yes and no. It doesn't really have anything from my personal life in it.
Got it.
It is more like there's anecdotes in it where it's like, hey, suppose that you've got a captain of a ship and he sees the ship across the pier burn. What's he going to think about fire safety on his ship? And like, well, how does that tie into Stoic philosophy? Stuff like that. Like, so you've got these anecdotes.
Okay.
But there's really not. It's not about me at all. The reason it's relevant that I'm in the military is because no one would publish it otherwise, without me having a PhD in philosophy. And that's kind of why I really just wanted to write a book about Stoicism, but I needed to tie it into the military to be able to sell to a publisher of like why they should publish what I wrote. Because what I quickly discovered, when you write a book, and I did not know this, and I might not have written it if I did know this because it was such a risk. But I kind of thought you write a book and now you've got a book together and you go to publishers and say, hey, will you publish my book? And they say, oh, I'm so glad that you wrote this book. Yeah, we'll love to publish it. No, it doesn't work like that at all. Really, all the publishers are just saturated by authors who have written books and want people to publish them. And just getting them to give you the time of day is really hard. And it's like back when bands made demo tapes and like every band had their demo tape and they just want the record companies to listen to them. Writing your book is like a demo tape, and like just getting someone to give it a listen is a hard thing to do. So I was very lucky to be able to find a publisher.
Yeah, especially like a lot of what a lot of people do is it's self-publishing, right? But self-publishing, it's all on you. You don't have the support. You have to share. You have to network. You have to find distribution. So it's for some people it may be easy, but for some others who devote themselves to write the book, it tends to be exhausting for them. And
Yeah.
you'll find a lot of people going through that.
Yeah, I was ready to do that. I thought I was going to have to, but I'm definitely better off having, and there's reasons it can be better to self-publish because you get a better return on it. Really, if you sell 100%. The same amount of books, you're going to get a better return on self-publishing. But at no point was this about money for me. Like I Navy pays me fine, and that's my job. This was just, I wanted to write this book. Yeah. And whenever you self-publish, you've got that credibility thing that you've got to overcome because you can self-publish anything and anyone can self-publish anything. So anyone you're trying to sell your book to or convince that you've written a good book, has to overcome that kind of hill of skepticism of did this person really write a good book or not, or did they just self-publish something that no one would publish? And so I was glad that I was able to able to overcome that, but it was incredibly lucky. Like, it's a weird book. It is not a typical book, and it's a very, very niche audience. So I'm very, very lucky that I was able to find a publisher to take it.
Would you, when you finished, before and it was entered to being published, did you have somebody you can trust that you said, "Hey, read this, let me know what you think"?
Yeah.
And if so, what was that feedback like?
I had several, and that's a thing that you've just got to do if you're going to be a writer. That's called beta readers, and you have to have beta readers. And that was definitely a learning experience, because when I finally finished the chapter, I just couldn't wait to put it together and like put all the chapters together, and like, now I have my book, and now it's like one big PDF, and I'm just really eager to send it out to people and immediately start sending it to publishers. And I really regret anyone I sent that to begin with, because after it went through the beta reader cycle, I had like 3 or 4 people read it, and the amount of feedback they got, was always shocking, because you just expect them to, you say, "Hey, like, criticize me, be hard, don't go easy on me, because I want this to add value." But you still kind of subconsciously expect them to be like, "Man, this is the best thing I've ever written. I can't believe you wrote this." Yeah. And instead they're like, "Hey, this chapter sucks, man. Like, I can't make it through this," and you're like, "No, that's a brilliant chapter. What are you talking about?" And you want to get defensive, but that was the best thing I could have asked for. And yeah. Now I compare what it became in like that last 6 months of fooling around with it and tweaking it, which, I thought I was done, and like, no, you're not done. And that last 6 months of tweaking it, it got so much better from what it was, whenever it was kind of like the first draft. And there, I'm embarrassed about, there's a whole chapter that's gone that I was just like, nah, that chapter sucks. And I got rid of it, and it was not necessary. Yeah. And I rewrote the introduction, I think a total of 5 times, but that was what I had to do to get it right. And, now it's right. So it's just a much better product now. Totally worth it.
So how many like rough drafts did you have to make or go through to have the final product? Was it a journey in itself?
Yeah. I mean, there was like basically there's a whole other book out there of just scrap crap that's gotten deleted. I wouldn't say, I have gone through and rewritten the whole book every time, because like the 5th chapter or something was like, that was pretty good from the first time I wrote it, but like the 1st and 2nd chapters had to get rewritten several times, so it's just different depending on what part of the book. But overall, the amount of stuff that has gotten deleted in the process was just a ton of work, and this is all stuff I'm doing like at night or early in the morning. My wife's just like, "Are you done with this book yet?" Like, we want to watch TV and hang out.
So was there anyone in particular that you let read once it was finalized?
Well, I was very eager to have people read it, and it's kind of like I said, it's kind of academic and kind of dense. And so I've what you will find whenever you write a book is everyone will say like, "Oh, I really would love to read it," but they really wouldn't, because it's work. You're asking them to do work,
what's frustrating, man, is that, unfortunately, and I hate to say this, like, when you're somebody with high education and you're passionate about philosophy, you have to speak to them like if you're painting a picture. Yeah, you have to real simple, use common words, because not a lot of people can, for them to grasp that, they have to be a person that loves reading, first of all.
Yeah.
Or enjoys poetry or some type of wordsmith to engage in that. You start, because Stoicism, it is what it is, but it's straightforward. It's not complicated. This is what you have to do. And a lot of people, oh man, I'm gonna get shit for this. There's a lot of people don't get that. They wanna look for a 5th leg on a cat, and when it only has 4, to make it simple. Yeah. So you just gotta keep doing you, man. You gotta keep doing you. Makes you happy, and you'll find that audience that will support you 100%.
Yeah, and I think that I have. I'm lucky in that the military is there's a lot more deep and intelligent people in it that the stereotypes would have you believe, and so the
Yeah.
joke is, wait, Will, so you wrote a book for people who are both in the military and really into philosophy. That's like 6 people, Will, like, well, it's more than that.
Dude, you can martial artists, gun enthusiasts,
Yeah.
you know, people who are in politics, right? Psychology. It's a big demographic that people wouldn't think. Like if you like, I love mixed martial arts, right? I love jujitsu. I can, go into a class. There's 5 people that would say this book is dope without just looking at the cover and open up the first chapter. I
Yeah.
know that for a fact. There's people out there that like that, but if you don't want to do the work, you're not going to get the reward.
Yeah. And doing the work that's hard to do. The self-promotion piece of it is really hard to overcome. The modesty to get on here and do these talk shows and talk to people on a podcast. It kind of feels like, well, who the hell do you think you are? You're just, you're supposed to be driving boats, man. Like, what are you doing getting out in front of a camera? Like, that's not what we do here. It's like, it's the follow through of writing a book is you have to do this. And I happen to enjoy it. I happen to enjoy meeting interesting people that I would not otherwise meet. And you learn stories that you would not otherwise learn. And that's how you grow as a person. But as far as the promoting the book, like I would really hate for it not to find readers just because I didn't do the legwork of, because it was too modest to go and talk about it on a talk show.
Yeah, yeah. I agree, man. I think books like yours help structure a culture. I remember I used to work at this corporate place. I don't want to mention names because it's a big company, and I can't remember the name of the book. It's like Runner for Runner, who's based off somebody who served in the Navy, and the book, like they do these structure corporate gatherings, and they give books and whatnot. And I took one. I took one, man.
That's
And
what they're there for.
I to this day, I look back on that book and remember like this guy who he was in the Navy, then became a runner, then he's running this Fortune 500 big ass corporate company, like, and everything he endured to get where he was. If it wasn't for the Navy, he would not go so far.
Yeah.
Well, I think about that book, once every week.
Yeah, I tell you, one of the things I like, it's definitely not for everyone. I'm now talking about the Navy or talking about the military. It is not for everyone, but the amount of growing and learning that you do in that environment is just, if you could bottle that up and sell it, like, I mean, it would change lives, and it definitely changed my life from the standpoint of, there's a lot about it that sucked. A lot about it wasn't fun. A lot about it I'm happy to never do again. But as far as just maturing me and growing me as a person, to say nothing of serving my country, which is extremely important to me,
Yes.
but the perspective of it and what that means evolves over time. And so, like, when you're a kid in high school, joining and serving your country sounds like this kind of nebulous good thing that, I'm coming from the deep South here. So it's kind of baked into the culture of like, that's just what you should do, but not really thinking through why. And there's a lot of, again, I like to think about things philosophically. There's a lot of time to think about why do I think that that's a valuable thing to do? Why do I think it's valuable to serve my country? And, is this, I'm out here driving a incredibly powerful weapon, basically standing by, to do, wage terrible war if needed. And that affects geopolitics in an important way that ensures stability for my countrymen. And what that actually means. And someone sitting right next to me can say, like, we're just not doing anything valuable. We're just wasting time here, and being able to think through those things and kind of see how they work on multiple levels has really grown me as a person. And it's been very valuable, to say nothing of coming out with technical training and education and all the things I've got out of it.
I mean, dude, one of the best advice that was ever given to me was a recruiter for the Army. You know, I grew up in Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico's, besides being Spanish, is very southern. Like Mississippi. You got to drive everywhere to get where your locations. And I had to come out first. I started when I was in, I think, 11th grade, right?
Mhm.
And you have to take these tests to see if you're going to go to college. I don't want to go to college. I didn't know what I wanted to do, right? So they offered me another test to join the military. I went and took it. I did horribly, right? Then I graduated from this institute to be a paramedic, and I said I'm going to go to the Army. I went and I failed it.
Oh yeah,
I failed it. Then I came back here to New Jersey, and I was living. It was a very tough time for me. Very, no different than my upbringings. And I went to recruit again. I went like 5 times and failed. And he said, here, let's talk for a minute. He asked me, why are you doing this? And I explained I was in a tough time. I need a solution. I think the best way for me is the Army. And he said, you're right. And he was like, but the problem is you're not putting in the work. You're to take these tests, you got to study. He explained to me the higher you get, the more better position you'll be in the Army, but also you add value to the Army. And if you just making decisions without putting in the work, you're not going to go anywhere. That's why you keep failing. You're not studying. You're not putting your part. You think by coming to the Army, it's you're fixing your problems, and you're not. And he ended with, man, you just got to do the work. And if you do it and you want to come try again, we're always welcome. But before you do, make sure you always, when anything you do, you put in the work. Dude, I took that to heart. That changed my life. That changed the way I looked at things. Obviously, I didn't go back, but it gave me the hope and the strength I needed to continue moving forward.
But then you put in the work and other things, and you find out that you're more capable. You're capable of more things than you thought.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I find that a lot on the sub. We get asked a lot of. One of the things people ask me a lot is, hey, don't people get claustrophobic and, lose it? And it's like, it's usually not claustrophobia. It's usually the stress or the workload or something like that. But you do have some number of people who, don't really adjust right. And they struggle and they say like, I can't do this, but what you find is a lot of them can, with the right mitigators and the right coaching and the right leadership. And it's really a leadership challenge, to identify those people that can really do a lot more than they think that they can do. And it can be challenging when it comes to the mental health question, because if someone says, hey, I think I'm depressed and things like that, then now we're talking about a medical issue, and I've got to treat it appropriately because I'm not a doctor. I'm not qualified to judge. This person doesn't really need to see medical treatment. So I need to get them to a person who is qualified to make that assessment, because, if you mess that up, the consequences can be devastating. But what I think is really impressive is the people who can do so much more than they thought they could do, or the people who can do so much more than anyone else thought they could do. And that's something I love to see. Whenever you have this guy who is part of the organization and everyone depends on him, and it's just like there's really no replacement plan, because he's the only guy who knows how to work all this equipment, and he's the only guy who knows how to manage this program, and everything's just depending on him. And how is the world going to keep turning when he leaves? And you just say, like, you know what, someone else will step up, and we will find someone, and they will do it, and they will step up, and we will all find out that person was capable of more than we thought. And that always is the case. Now, it is not always the case that they are as good as the person they relieved. Sometimes they never get that good. Sometimes it just takes them a while, but you come through it. That's part of the process. The ship struggles for a little while because guy who ran the nuclear weapons security program or whatever was just like the best guy who does that ever. And then he left, and the guy that replaced him didn't know how to run the program. And so we struggled for a little while, but then we come through it. And this new guy who didn't have this opportunity before, now he's got this opportunity to shine and manage this complex program. He learns that about himself. He learns that skill. Everyone else learns that he could do it, and everyone else learns that the world's going to keep turning. And that's one of my favorite things to observe, is to see people step up and deliver.
Yeah, and that's life. That's life. Whatever that it's not just being in a submarine or being some part of the branch. It's life. You're gonna have those that gonna step up. You're gonna have those who are just right to get it to the next thing, and that's just life.
Yeah. And so sometimes it's you get really surprised by how much somebody is the right person at the right place at the right time.
Yeah. What's your favorite chapter in your book?
I think it would have to be the last chapter. That is where I get into the what's called just war theory. And this is libraries have been written on this stuff, but that is the questions of when is it justified? When is it good to go to war? And so people who don't ever think about this stuff may just think like, well, all war is horrible. Therefore it's anyone who participates in it is, a party to murder, and we shouldn't talk about justifying it. But that doesn't stand up to very much. Once you start asking the questions like, okay, so should, the North have, not gone and fought the South in the Civil War? Is that what you're saying? Oh, well, no, and, things like that. Like there are reasons to go to war, and thinking through when it is not just what a good person does, but when it would be a moral failure to not go to war. That's when you get into what's called just war theory. And this is stuff that was thought about mostly in the Middle Ages, is whenever it kind of coalesced as a theory of philosophy or a theory of morality. But it's been continuously argued about and talked about ever since. And basically what my 6th chapter of the book is about is how would the ancient Stoics look at these questions? And that's where the rest of the book is basically setting up Stoicism and basically talking about how that philosophy works. And that's an interesting thing we should talk about, but, and then the final chapter is where it kind of all comes together. It's kind of like the payload of the book of okay, now how does a Stoic thinking about being a warrior and military service? That's why the subtitle of the book is Insights on the Morality of Military Service.
What's your, in your personal opinion, what's a Stoic? So a person like you who's a Stoic, who has those beliefs, who which is necessary to be in this type of predicament in this work field that you're in. What's your perspective on that?
So basically, what makes Stoicism what it is as a philosophy is it's thinking about what separates it from the other philosophies of ancient Athens. You've got the Stoics, but you've got the Cynics and the Aristotelians, the Platonics, and everything. What makes the Stoics what they are is that they are focused on virtue. Moral virtue is what is good is virtue, and everything that's not virtue is irrelevant to them. And so the implications of that, basically the rest of the philosophy, is what follows from that. So what follows from that is that anything that is not in my power to control, and control absolutely, is not it's not virtue, and therefore it's irrelevant. So that means things like wealth, health, my position, my job, all of these are things that I can do stuff to like try to have a better job. I can do things to try to be wealthy, but things can happen that are completely beyond my power that can cause that not to go my way. Same thing with my health. I can run and work out and eat right and all that and still get cancer. So that is something that they would consider. What the word they use for it is an indifferent or an external. It is a thing that is external to my control and my choice, my agency. and therefore it does not reflect on my virtue, on my morality.
Mm-hmm.
And so what follows from that is that they basically train themselves to not be emotional about those things that you cannot control. And so that's where they get the reputation for being unemotional, is because, oh, I got cancer. Like, well, that doesn't reflect on my virtue. So it doesn't, it doesn't really matter. Now that's an extreme and kind of a radical view, but it is, what I argue is that even if it's so radical that you don't necessarily buy it, it is a useful way of thinking and is a useful framework to look at something. And that alone brings you more to an ideal of having self-control. Yeah.
Powerful.
And so the, kind of the key example is if somebody insults me or, cuts me off in traffic, or I'm worried about, how I'm going to do in my job. And, I'm worried about if I'm going to get this next award or promotion or stupid thing, some non-moral thing that doesn't reflect on me as a person. It's not that thing that makes me worried. It's not that thing that is affecting me. Or the person who insults me, it's not him that has offended me. It's myself. It's my judgment about this situation and my thoughts and how I interpret it and how I react to it that is causing me to be angry, because somebody else could receive that same exact insult and not be angry about it. That's internal to me that is causing me to be angry, and recognizing that that's my problem to solve. That's my responsibility to sort out how I handle this idiot that just insulted me. I could not think anything of it.
Yeah. It's like holding yourself accountable, to the highest degree, right? And where things are going to happen, but just because they happen, that you can't let that define you or affect you. Because
Right.
There are going to be certain things in life that you're not going to have control over.
That's right.
And there's some things in life that are just natural. People are going to die, right? People are sometimes are going to struggle, but those are things that you eventually going to have to go through. It's life.
Yeah, they're not you.
Yeah.
And even my job, I'm a commander in the Navy, and I'm very proud of that. And I worked very hard to achieve
where you're
that
at.
position.
Yeah.
But if I get too wrapped up in that and everything, tomorrow something could go wrong and I could not be a commander anymore. I could make some mistake. I could say something classified on this podcast because I just get too carried away about something and I get fired tomorrow. My security clearance revoked, and and now I've got to get out of the Navy because I can't do anything useful anymore. I mean, there's any number of things could happen where this thing that I value, this uniform, this rank and everything, but it's not me. It's beyond my power. It is not my morality. It's not my choice. So the really extreme version of that. So my favorite Stoic philosopher is a guy named Epictetus. And Epictetus, he's kind of like lesser known, and you hear Socrates and Aristotle and all this. You don't hear that much about Epictetus because he's kind of more obscure in that regard. But he was actually a slave before he became a philosopher. And his experience of being a slave really shaped and informed his way of thinking about philosophy, and using that focus on my own moral agency is what I am and nothing else. I am none of those other things. So you can enslave my body. You can put a chain on my leg. You can chain my leg, but you can't chain me, because what I am is my ability to interpret this situation and make decisions, and they call it choice. I am my sense of choice, and I am nothing else. My body can defy me. It can get sick. It can do all these things. I am my choice, and I'm not even my future or my past. I am just my choice right now. The past, whatever past me has done or experienced, it might levy responsibilities on me, and might cause, I might have debts to pay that affects or informs what are my appropriate things to do right now, but it's not me. I exist in this moment from this moment forward. And that's a very powerful thought, because you're not bought into whatever mistake you have made in the past. You have appropriate things that you may need to do about it, but you're not destined to continue to be that person. You're destined to be the person you are at this very moment. That is all you are, and that is kind of the what I get at with the use of the knife as a metaphor, because the Stoic knife is what I argue is a way of thinking about the what I can control and what I can't, as a dividing line between what is me and what isn't. And, if you cut off all those things that I cannot control, all those things that are non-moral factors that don't reflect on my moral self, all that's left is just me in this instant, and my ability to choose what I do and how I interpret my world.
Yeah. In a nutshell. Yeah. Yeah. Very powerful stuff, man.
It is a very, very useful and powerful and constructive philosophy. The thing that, people will turn people off is they'll say, like, that sounds really extreme. You're telling me that I could be happy while I'm imprisoned. I don't believe that. And it's like, well, no one is going to be perfectly stoic. Mm-hmm. What it is a useful way of thinking about things.
Yeah. I think it's more like the way I view it, right? And like the way when I read multiple times Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, right? I think Stoicism is more like accepted things for what they are. Mm-hmm. Coming to a acceptance and certain things in life, accepting that, you can control yourself as the best of your ability, but you can't control everything that's around you. One of the things that stands out about his meditation is like the what was it? The punishment for pleasure will be more more than the one for vengeance, right?
Yeah.
So like, because if you do out of something to vengeance because you're enraged, they made you come out of character to take that initiative. But when you're doing something wrong out of pleasure, that's when things get crazy, right? That's like, but then what I'm trying to say is like, it's something, to me, a story is something that you have to come to terms. You're not your circumstances. You are who you are no matter what, whether you're in flesh or in spirit, you are who you are. But you must come to acceptance, whatever situation, like you mentioned, a slave or imprisonment, you must come to acceptance, whatever the case may be, and you got to deal with it.
And that doesn't mean giving up. Okay. And this is where people will, that
does not, correction, it does not mean giving up.
Yeah.
It means you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. So, you're a fan of Marcus Aurelius. So Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the world at the time, who was just a remarkably good and moral person, despite being he could have had anything he wanted at any time. He could have been a horrible dictator. And instead he just was focused on trying to be the best human being that he could and do his job. But this most powerful man in the world, the person that he read, the philosopher that he read, was this slave, Epictetus. So they are in, and that dichotomy is incredible to me. Is you take this really humble person who is basically informing this extremely powerful person. But a good example of that not giving up and accepting your situation not being the same thing that is giving up is the admiral that I learned about Stoicism from. That's Admiral Stockdale. So he is a fascinating character to look up. He was basically in a torture camp as a prisoner of war captured in Vietnam. He was a pilot who was shot down, but he happened to be, before he was ever shot down, he was also deeply read in philosophy. And talk about the right guy in the right time. He was shot down. He was a commander at the time, and he was the senior ranking officer in prisoner of war camp. And basically, as soon as he gets situated there, he realizes that his role is to be in charge of all the prisoners there. All the American prisoners were of a junior rank to him, and now he's suddenly there. He's in charge, even though they're all prisoners. But his job is to basically communicate with everybody, and they were only able to communicate by tapping on the wall, and they developed a code to tap to each other. But by getting really good at communicating in that way, he was able to promulgate, a whole code of conduct and, rules and regulations, and kind of check up on everybody and keep everyone in order and keep everyone held together. He accepted his situation that I'm in prison. Okay. But his, the prison authority tried to make him and all the other prisoners think, you are criminals, you're war criminals. That's why you're here. You're animals. You are not human beings. And instead of accepting that role, that imposed role by this prison authority, he recognized his role as, I'm the commander of American POWs in this camp, and I've got a job to do. And so that's the difference kind of between giving up and accepting your situation. You recognize your situation, you recognize what you can't control and you can't do anything about, and then you focus your energies on what you can do. And by just tuning out all that irrelevant crap and not being angry at the weather, not being angry at these forces that are beyond your control, you focus on what you can do, and then you do that much more effectively.
I'm into that.
Yeah.
I'm into that. Yeah. It's not, I laugh because I try to explain that to my wife and she never gets me.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, sometimes, especially when we're dealing with our loved ones, sometimes sometimes they just want someone to say, that sucks. That's awful. I can't believe she said that. What an idiot,
Yeah. I'm into that, man. I can't wait till your book comes out, man. I can't wait to read it.
Dude, I
awesome,
really hope it brings you value.
It does.
I think you'll like it.
Yeah,
so
man.
It releases in November in the US. For some reason, it releases earlier. It's supposed to be September in the UK. I don't know why there's a difference there. It has something to do with the magic of distribution networks or whatever. I don't know. It's publisher gobbledygook. I don't know. But right. I'm very much looking forward to it, but
no, I think it's going to be awesome. I think it's going to be great. I think once it hits the social culture, it's going to expand, because sometimes it's, we don't need a lot of, how do I say this without sounding like a douche? Sometimes we need more discipline and accepting our circumstances and gather information that's around us. So once you accept that, we could start from there on what we want to do in life.
Absolutely.
It sounds like, God, I'm regretting this already. You can't be always sensitive to circumstances. You can't be always acknowledging people's feelings, because sometimes those feelings are the ones that put you in that space that you can't overcome sometimes.
Can you give me an example?
Man. All right.
I'm sorry. You're supposed to be interviewing me. I wasn't supposed to do that, right?
No. Like, all right. So like, I'll use myself, for example. So like, growing up, it was really tough for me. Right. And, I grew up with my grandparents. They're already old. I couldn't ask, much for them. Right. So in school, because I'm an American-born citizen, moving to another country, right? Being raised by his grandparents. Nobody knows who I am or where I came from, who's my family. And, you have children that try to pick on you, try to bully you, right? Today, nowadays, because it's bullying, right? So, like, as a kid, I had a choice. Do I sit there and in my feelings and continue to fall and being a victim? Or these kids who are constantly bullying me, or do I stand up for myself? I feel like sometimes it's easy to sit there and drown in your own feelings and be helpless. And sometimes it's very hard to stand up for yourself. So what do you do?
Yeah.
So as a kid, what did I do? Now, granted, and people, a person in a different scenario may be different, right? But sometimes, especially in the nowadays we're living, you have to stand up for yourself. You can't always have that wishful mentality that, why would somebody help me? Or why would somebody be there for me? Sometimes you gotta do it for yourself.
Oh yeah, the cavalry's not coming. Yeah,
You know?
the thing is whenever it is time to stand up for yourself, whenever that is the appropriate thing to do, you're going to be a
Yes.
hell of a lot more effective at it if you're not emotional, you know. And that's one of the things that people ask me about sometimes when we get into stoicism and control of your emotions. And it's not about suppressing your emotions. It's about
Correct.
identifying the thing that's causing that, identifying the judgment that is causing that emotion and saying, okay, is that a correct judgment or not? And if it's not correct, neutralizing it. And people say, well, isn't it useful to be angry sometimes? Like, won't you fight better? I'm like, what are you talking about? Okay, so you're a boxer, you're a prize fighter. Do you want to be the one that gets pissed off, or do you want to get the other guy pissed off while you're calculating? You know, and so if my job is to fight, whether that is in a fist fight or if that's
Yeah.
I've got to deliver torpedoes to targets and do a combat engagement. If my job is to fight, I want to be as cold and calculating as I possibly can. And that's how I'm going to do that most effectively. And that same idea applies to any other resolution of conflict that I might come through, whether it's negotiating in a job interview or trying to deal with a pain in the ass employee or deal with a boss that's breathing down my neck inappropriately.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the situation, if I've got a conflict to resolve, the more cold and calculating I can be, the more
Mm-hmm.
effective I'm going to be.
Yeah. It was like, have you ever read the Five Rings?
Yeah.
Bushido, right? Like the way he fought, right? As skilled he was, he used his surroundings to be an asset to him.
Yeah.
So like a
Move like
person
water.
that, yeah, like someone, and I'm watching, I apologize. Like there it was one instant in where he told him to be early. The guy was there early and he made him wait. The guy got this imbalance. He got angry, like, sometimes having a clear mind would help you go longer than an emotional one.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm trying to explain.
Yeah. We're in agreement.
All
100%.
right.
Well, the nice thing about if the stoicism thing resonates with you or any of your listeners, you don't need to buy my book. Like there is so much out there. Some of it's misleading. Some of it is garbage, but there's a lot of good stuff out there that's free and totally accessible. There's a good stoicism community on Reddit, and all kinds of good stuff that's just free to read and free to get into if it resonates with you and it sounds interesting. So I love it. I'm a very big fan of the philosophy.
And in this case, we're going to purchase your book and support you because, you defend our country, you're putting yourself on the line, and that's the least we can do. So, let's not look for the free stuff at the moment. You can look after you purchase the book, you can look for that. Let's get his book. Command the Spirits, has been an honor and a privilege speaking with you, sir. Thank you for giving me the time and day and joining me on the show today.
Brother, I appreciate it. This has been great.
Before we go, please tell the people where they can find the book, find your website, social media.
Books on Amazon. I've got a website, williamcspears.com. That's just where, if you want to read essays and stuff like that, go there. And Dio, if we could just put that stuff in the show notes, I'd appreciate that.
We'll do, sir.
Okay.
So make sure, guys, when books comes out, you purchase that ASAP. And yeah, make sure you continue to support us. Like and subscribe our YouTube channel, DIOTALK TV. And if you're inspired and you like what we're doing, continue bringing these amazing guests with their amazing story, buy me a coffee. Everything's going to be on the description. And make sure you like and subscribe and share our story, our channel as well. Have a good night, guys. I'm out.